All
Good
right,
evening, everyone.
I'm going to jump in. I'm not on the agenda, but I just wanted to say that I checked out the story map that you all loaded online, and it's so cool. And I hope everybody goes and checks it out. The tab at the top for the bike ped, it even has the maps for where all the trails would go and everything. And yes, that was it. I was really kind of like, how are we going to make it through this meeting? And then you see that, like, all right, we keep pushing. Yeah, it's awesome. And the map for the proposed projects is cool. Like the graphics are awesome. So that's my thank you for all you guys are doing, whoever the mapping wizards are.
Well, Daniel Sizemore is one of them.
Yeah, y'all, this really is a big deal. Thank you, Andrea. This is the first time that we've been able to look at proposed projects. They don't even exist yet, but get a real true feel for where they are. And y'all, man, this takes so much work. We have 90 projects, and then a huge chunk of those, look at these, a huge number of these are bike ped. So I mean, this is an excellent job on part of staff, the SPLOST office, and it's really tremendously helpful for us as a committee.
You know, from the very beginning, I think it was the last 10 year ago SPLOST, when Gwen Looney was the mayor, I remember her saying to all of us, over 50% of the dream projects were Greenway driven. And that was then. So, you know, these seem like burdensome lists, but they are so exciting to realize the demand.
Yes. Thank you for that comment, Madeline. And just so the public knows, the way you can find that story map is on the ACC Gov website. Really, if you just Google like Athens TSPLOST 2023, you'll not only see the full list of projects and presentations, but this story map that Andrea just mentioned was so excited about. And you can, as we've said before, leave comments. There's a survey there. It's just so terribly exciting, and the level of detail is great. We have another full night of projects coming up. Some folks from neighborhoods, and then ADDA, I believe, will be here. Athens in Motion is back, and of course, we'll hear from Fred Quazon Payne and Buck Bacon, honorary committee members, practically. We're glad to have them. Glad to have so many great submissions from Athens neighborhoods for this TSPLOST. But before we get into that, we do need to approve our minutes from last night's meeting. Before I entertain a motion, are there any corrections to the minutes?
Lord, I read that, and I see that they did change that motion that put yes and no language in there. So with that being done, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Frank. That's a first and a second. And who was that? Dawn? Okay.
Dawn, yeah.
Dawn seconding. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Oh, I don't get a vote. Any opposed, same sign. All right. And we will stop sharing. All right, 7 projects tonight. And our first project on the list is project number 61, Hancock Neighborhood Pedestrian Bike Traffic and On-Street Parking. Do we have Kim in the house tonight?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome, Kim. Glad to have you. Will you be peddling your presentation, or do you need for us to drive the slides for you?
Either way, I'm flexible. Happy for you guys to share your screen if you all have the presentation on hand.
I do believe we have it on hand, and we can do that for you if you would like. You would just need to tell Derek when to go, when to advance the slides. You would just need to say next.
Okay, sounds Sounds good.
Yeah. As with all of our presentations, you have 10 minutes and Derek will give you a 1-minute warning, and then we'll have 10 minutes of questions and then another 5 minutes for additional questions or discussion.
Okay, thanks. Well, thank you guys so much for this time. I don't know that I'll use up the whole 10 minutes, and I'm not familiar with this process, but thank you for the opportunity to talk. My name is Kim Sherwick, and I'd just like to take a minute and introduce myself. I've been a resident of Athens for over 20 years, and I've lived in my current neighborhood for over 10. I work at the University of Georgia as an assistant director for the Owens Institute for Behavioral Research, and I've been working in research at the university for over 15 years. My husband, Andy, is a working artist, and he's also lived in Athens for over 20 years. And we bought and renovated 1203 West Hancock Avenue 7.5 years ago. And we bought 1220 West Hancock Avenue from Michael Thurman, and it was about 5 years ago now. And that used to be a general store in this neighborhood. So when renovating both properties, we wanted to be mindful of both the character and the history of the neighborhood, and we really love living here. But ever since I've moved in, I've noticed a lot of traffic concerns, and I've brought those concerns up both to Commissioner Link, Commissioner Neesmith, to David Clarke, and I've copied Blaine Williams on some of my emails and concerns about it. And of course, the recent pandemic has thrown quite a hinkle in anybody doing anything, as does having a little one. We have a 4.5-year-old who currently attends Emmanuel Episcopal Day School, but will attend the Clarke County Public School System. So thank you again for your time. The main focus of the proposal request is to study and improve traffic, pedestrian, and bicycle safety in the West Hancock Avenue corridor. And that includes, as it says here on the title slide, the neighborhood encompasses the Plaza, Reese Street, Glen Haven, Phillips, Endale, Franklin, Church, Harris, and Fenley. And given that you guys all probably travel downtown frequently, you've probably traveled through here quite a lot and noticed how congested it might get and how people speed and how people drive. And you've probably seen there's a lot of pedestrians in this area. Next slide, please. So what we're specifically asking for in this neighborhood proposal that I put forth is traffic analysis, traffic management, and traffic calming methods and devices. The study of those, again, I'm not terribly familiar with the operations of the city, so I can't pretend to go into all of the details related to that, but I know that it's really sorely needed for our neighborhood. Sidewalk construction, crosswalks would be really, really helpful. Street trees, retaining wall repair, on-street parking is becoming a huge problem. And as there's more development happening in the area, we all know about the Varsity closing, and there's going to be a big development going in there. And that's going to cause just a lot, I think, going on, a lot of speeding through these streets. Reese Street doesn't even have a continuous sidewalk. And then we really need community outreach because this is a very diverse neighborhood. We've got a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life in our neighborhood, and it would be really nice to have professional community outreach. Oh, next slide, sorry. So it's a historically African-American neighborhood. It's actually in the Federal Registry as a historical neighborhood, and it is designated as a major collector. And I've been informed that by some of the city the city guidelines, as I've asked about traffic calming and whatnot, that there may be limitations as to speeds that we're able to put on the West Hancock Avenue. But again, one of the missions of this would be to study whether or not speed could be reduced potentially to 30 miles per hour or something like that. And again, we have a very diverse neighborhood with residents that vary from, public housing. We've got 2 public housing neighborhoods in here. We have a lot of senior citizens who have lived here for a number of years. My neighbor next door was born in his house and he's 82 years old. My neighbor behind me has lived in his house for over 30 years and his parents lived there for 20 before that. So I just really like to see some input and, from everybody in the community as this project potentially goes forward. Next slide, please. So traffic is frequently congested and the speeds are often dangerous. And I'll just tell you guys a quick story. When I first moved into to this house, we actually, within 1 year of buying our house, we had several accidents right on the corner. Someone turned directly into a bicyclist and flipped them over their car. An adult male, he was around our age, my husband and I are in our mid-40s, rear-ended a family who was waiting to turn from Hancock onto Billups and knocked them forward like a full car length easily. And I only say this because most of the accidents I witness are not college kids. It tends to be just a variety of drivers. Several adults have been carried away in ambulances. I've seen another accident that took out the stop sign across the street from us on Billups, and I've seen an accident where a car flipped into the telephone pole that stands outside of our property right across the street at 1220 West Hancock. And not very long ago, after Arlo was born, I think he was probably 2.5 or 3, we were coming out of my husband's art studio, which is across the street at 1220. And as we walked out the door, a car just right in front of us slammed into another car that was crossing the street. And just completely smashed, and right in front of a 2.5-year-old. So I was a little bit worried about the noise, for instance, but also the trauma related to that. But of course, he doesn't really remember it, even when I bring it up. But there's just been a lot of accidents. So I am concerned about speeding traffic and increased traffic volume, or children that come wobbling down on their bikes and turn around. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the old general store on Hancock, and it's got the parapet wall that goes up, but they'll come wobbling up and then they'll like turn around under that porch. And I'm just so terrified that one of them is gonna kind of flip out into the street one day and somebody's gonna hit them. And while we're on that topic, I didn't really mention this in the presentation, but the bus stops, we have several bus stops, and we actually I think it's 4 bus lines that stop along Hancock in the corridor here. And I think the bus stops could use some attention too. And I would hope that that would be part of the study for traffic and pedestrian and bicycle safety, because there's not a place for people to sit and there's not a cover for rain. And I have on numerous occasions just given people umbrellas who are standing at the bus and they just standing there getting rained on, as they weren't expecting the skies to just open up on them. So next slide, please. So project vision, safety, greatly improving our safety and quality of life for community outreach is of course imperative. Next slide, please. Again, those are the streets that we're sort of envisioning for this project. Next slide, please. So we believe that this closes the equity gap a little bit by listening to a diverse group of people regarding what they want out of their neighborhood, and also by improving the neighborhood, allowing people who don't own cars to be able to walk and get around more safely. And I think that that would be really helpful to preserve and increase community safety and well-being. Next slide, please.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay. So we're looking to foster safe and smart growth in an already mixed income, mixed use neighborhood. And we hope that this meets the Mayor and Commission's strategic commitments of healthy, livable, and sustainable Athens. improve the environment by having people walk and bike and use the bus, and that will increase transit fares, hopefully. So I think that's my time. Can wrap up there.
Thank you, Kim. Questions for Kim on the Hancock neighborhood pedestrian, bike, traffic, and on-street parking? All right, Frank, please go ahead.
Just a little short story. A little over 54 years ago, my wife and I were married at 125 Franklin Street. This little house, we got married in the living room there. So I'm very, very, very familiar with that area over there. And uh, over the years, it has been increased to somewhat of a cut through rather than going to Broad Street. And it is, I'll have to agree with you, traffic and speeding is an issue on that. And thank you for bringing that forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your insight, Frank. Appreciate that as someone who has lived there. Additional questions for Kim? Kim, are there any of these that are, any parts of this that are top priority for you? I mean, I know that you said you want to gather input from the community and whatnot. Are there any of these that you think any parts of this project that will stand out, that you really want to do above everything else?
I would say that the studies of traffic management, traffic calming, I think those studies are probably just bar none the most important. Crosswalks and traffic management and just pedestrian safety. I mean, it's so important. Again, with Reese Street not having continuous sidewalks and the development going in where the varsity was, I mean, maybe that will include that. I don't really know, but all of Reese Street is a little bit dangerous, and there's a lot of small kiddos in this neighborhood, so I find it pretty concerning.
John?
Is my mic working? Can you hear me? Right. For once, yes, my mic works. Thanks, Kim. Do you have any ballpark, and forgive me if this is in the detailed submission and I just haven't seen that. Do you have any ballpark sense of how money would be allocated for potentially land acquisition and actual construction costs versus design and studies?
So the ballpark for land acquisition was $250,000 as far as easements and right of way. I don't anticipate, needing to. I don't know what that costs, to be honest. So I worked a little bit with some more professional people on this and asked Commissioner Link for some guidance and assistance. And then the ballpark for the I'm sorry, what was the other thing that you were asking about? Land acquisition, and then what?
Oh, construction versus studies.
The construction, we put 2.5 million. Construction contingency was 10% of that, so it was an additional 250,000. So 2.75 million total for construction.
Okay, thank you.
And Patrina has a question.
Yeah, sorry, my hand raise isn't working, or something. Anyway, it's slow. I was really wondering about priorities, and I think we've touched on it already, but crosswalks are the priority here.
I think traffic calming devices, traffic calming, traffic planning, traffic related studies is even more important, honestly, than crosswalks. I mean, I would love to see some crosswalks, but the traffic is really the biggest concern. It's just people do use it as a cut through, as has already been noted, and they just fly with no regard to it being a neighborhood area.
Dawn?
Thanks for that. I just wanted some clarity on, it does mention that there's money from Project 13 on 2018 TSPLOST. And so how does this fit into the roundabout? And I don't remember the project number that was presented by Athens Land Trust. It seemed to be some of the same areas. So I guess I'm trying to see where all of that fits in.
My understanding was that the land trust project handled the extension of Hancock that crosses Broad and goes between like Broad and Baxter and isn't this side of Broad. So what we're trying to specifically address here is the side of Broad where the roundabout would occur and people would go flying up Hancock towards downtown, using it as a connector towards downtown. My understanding from talking to Commissioner Link is that there was about $500,000 potentially remaining from the TSPLOST funds for the roundabout area, maybe. But again, not knowing city details so terribly well, I'm afraid I can't speak to whether or not that $500,000 is actually available to be allocated to this project, but it sounded like Commissioner Link indicated that it was a potential. And it seems like when my project was reviewed, that was indicated as a potential allocation towards this project as well, that $500,000.
Andrea has a question in the chat, and I wonder if Derek can help us with this. She notes that the amount for the study isn't broken out into the project costs, and I wonder if that's because the projects have to detail capital costs and that we can't just have a project that's for a study. Is it something along the lines of that, Derek, or can you help us out?
Yes, ma'am. That's the intent of this SPLOST program, is to have capital projects to move that forward. However, in the breakout of the dollar amount, I would imagine that study could be funded out of some of the design effort that was, the submission had about $250,000 for design effort, and that can be utilized to develop some of the studies that would move forward to the conceptual and preliminary design effort.
Thank you, Derek. Does that help, Andrea?
That answers my question. Thanks.
Sure. Madeline?
Just, when you're reviewing the real issues behind all of this, are the traffic analyses, you observed cars flipping over onto telephone poles and, and you've seen your share of rear endings. Are these well documented circumstances that you can pull up as part of record keeping on the part of authorities?
So David Clark, when I reached out to him in 2016, I think he reached out to the police department and got some information from them about the number of wrecks that had occurred just in the year that I had lived here at that time. So I think that we could pull accident reports certainly from the city because the police are generally always coming. I don't personally have a log of the accidents. But I think that is potentially requestable information.
So that's not communicated between the police department. Frank, maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, they can, they have the capability of pulling out any area and the number of crashes. They call them crashes now, from any period of time, just by feeding that information into the system. That would be an easy request there.
Y'all, I have shared the ACC roadway crashes map from 2015, 2019 again. And sometimes the data is a little slow to load, but you can zero in on every crash that has happened in Athens-Clarke County. And you can spend a lot of time here, and you can see that along Hancock, there's particularly a lot once it goes into Broad.
But that's not information that you would automatically communicate from the police to traffic headquarters. Is that not something that the traffic department would want to know just as an updated, daily report kind of thing?
I think they do. They get these this data from ACC police. I think that's the only way to capture the data. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
they work in conjunction with one another, feeding that information to traffic engineering. It's a shared thing.
Good.
And Frank, did you have your hand up again?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I was just responding to that.
Thank you. Maybe, I don't know. Any other questions or comments for Kim?
Worthwhile project.
Yeah.
I think we'd all have to agree. It's our
Yeah.
cut through.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's very important to our neighbors for sure. So thank you very much. And to the safety of the community.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you all.
And this is that crash map. If you zoom in, you can see per crash, like what is going on.
Wow.
And it can be a little bit misleading where it says 1 to 48. I think you need to divide that into, because there's a point map and a heat map. But you can get a sense for like what is going on, not just here for this project, of course, but for, any of our projects where, safety is a concern. Again, can spend a lot of time here, but of course, this is just the past 5 years. So this is not every crash that has happened in Athens-Clarke County over the past decade or since
Right.
year 2000, but it amazed me. So can spend a lot of time there.
Well, thank you again. If you guys don't need me, I'll let you go.
All right, Kim. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Thanks for all you guys do. I appreciate it.
Okay, next on the list, Project 60, College Square Pedestrian Plaza. I believe we have David Lynn from the ADDA here tonight.
Thank you,
Welcome, David.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate the opportunity of being in front of you tonight. I have to echo the previous speaker and giving everyone a heartfelt thanks for agreeing to serve on a committee like this. It's a thankless task, but an extremely important one, and I appreciate y'all allowing me to be a part of it. I will fall upon Derek if he doesn't mind managing the slideshow. I would appreciate it. My name again is David Lynn. I'm with the Athens Downtown Development Authority. The mission of the Downtown Development Authority has been since 1977 to strengthen the economic and social vitality of our downtown. The DDA has been involved with downtown projects such as the original College Square, the West Washington Street public-private mixed-use partnership there, and a soon-to-be created public park at the corner of Lumpkin and Washington Street. And you should see groundbreaking on that park sometime in the new year. On behalf of the Board of Directors and in partnership with Athens-Clarke County Central Services Department, it's my pleasure to present our TSPLOST proposal, and that is the College Square Improvement Project. This is a much anticipated project on behalf of the public. It's been discussed since the late 70s at least. And I believe, and obviously I'm biased to downtown, but I believe this is a project that will be considered the hallmark of this TSPLOST and could crystallize the public support for the overall referendum. It's a very visible project. The great thing about being an Athenian is that most Athenians have some sense of civic identity represented through something downtown. That could be the university, it could be College Square, it could be City Hall, but most of us, when we describe ourselves as Athenians, have something in downtown that strengthens that image. Tonight, if you'll go to the next slide, our task is to redesign and reimagine College Square. It's served as the central point of downtown since the 19th century, and I propose that we can make this College Square the focal point for the whole community. The nice thing about College Square is that a time traveler from the late 1900s could at the late 1800s could come back to Athens and recognize College Square as being what it is, College Square. It looks remarkably similar to when it was originally created. What we would like to encourage tonight is the closure of College Square to vehicular traffic and create a flexible space open to pedestrians. That flexible space could be used for concerts and festivals, as well as impromptu gathering places, meeting places, and as an overall attractor to pedestrians downtown, and thereby strengthening that pedestrian culture for downtown. It would also improve stormwater capability by incorporating some of the successful designs that we've seen on Clayton Street. I've already seen, even in the portions of Clayton Street that are completed, what used to be standing pools of water after a significant rain event are now carried away by the trench drain systems and ferried into stormwater retention areas. And this would continue that tradition with plantings and rain gardens and those similar trench drains. Also, what we would like to promote is a textural change to College Square. The whole concept is based on a curbless street design where a pedestrian would simply enter College Square and there wouldn't be a dichotomy between what is now the street and the sidewalk. A person would enter that plaza just like you would a patio from storefront to storefront where topography allows. That would be a seamless exchange of texture. There would be some pavement type changes to the square itself. We would like to eliminate the memory of vehicular lanes by changing that pavement texture through the square. We'd also like to present overhead lighting, which is very successful in these types of projects. People love the lights and the trees at Christmas time, and folks tend to gravitate and take pictures of themselves and others when there's a catenary lighting system over the street. And our plan also presents areas for flexible seating and gathering in order to facilitate those functions and events. As a COVID-related measure, the Mayor and Commission closed College Square and created a food court, so to speak, for social distancing reasons and to help the restaurant-based businesses that line College Square. It's time to improve the aesthetics. The functionality of the square is unparalleled. Practically on any day, you can go down there and see people sitting in those benches, sitting in those seats, drinking coffee, studying, have their computers up, that type of thing. But it's time to match that unparalleled functionality with an aesthetic that we can all be proud of. I think Athenians expect a certain aesthetic out of their central squares, and it's time to update that from an older, auto-centric, vehicular 80s look to a new design. And I think what you're seeing in College Square is the public essentially has already voted with their feet on the success of this project. This isn't a project that will build it and see if they come. They're already there. We need to improve upon that success and further improve it to where people want to come in and visualize and be a part of that College Square. I believe Andrew Saunders from the Central Services Department does have some surveys on usage of the square. And if he doesn't mind telling us about those now, I sure would appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, David. So when the Mayor and Commission moved to close College Square as a pilot, we started a daily randomized survey, 7 days a week between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m., where once a day we would go down and take a look at use. And while we were there, we would, record the weather, the time, how many people were there, how many of them had product, and if there was any issues with panhandlers or other undesirable behavior. What we actually found is that College Square averages 9 customers an hour and a total of about 50. So that brings out to about 50,000 plus customers a year. And on top of that, there's a total of about 300,000 plus visitors a year, people who might go and set up a computer, read a book, paint a painting. But those 50 some odd thousand customers a year, if they're averaging $15 a product, are spending about $800,000 in our local economy while enjoying that. And so we can certainly share any more information or answer questions about that later if you have them.
Thanks, Andrew. Derek, if you don't mind going to the next slide. What you see in front of you now is a conceptual design from our friends over at WLA Studios that have worked on a number of downtown projects before. And they're presenting to you a flexible use space based on a curbless street design, pavement changes, pavement texture changes, increased green space, increased plantings, increased stormwater handling. You've all, in the next slide, in the cross section, you can visualize the overhead lighting over the sidewalk. What is currently the sidewalk will have an overhead lighting. It's our understanding that the Department of Transportation no longer allows municipalities to put overhead lighting over the streets. So we'll have to be content with lighting in the trees and over the former sidewalks. You can also see a space designed to accept festivals and kiosks and things of that nature, and give people the opportunity for flexible seating arrangements on the side. And even within the interior, in WLA's idea, they have these kind of boulders that people would sit on. Now, I'm not under any illusion. This is a very visible point for Athenians, and an area that many Athenians hold dear. And so I assume there'll be much public discussion about how this plaza looks like. This is just a departure point. Most of these top successful projects that have occurred in the United States and in North America, such as Argyle Street in Halifax, Old Town Square in Fort Collins, Colorado, and the Newark Avenue project in Jersey City, all include some basic elements such as the curbless street design, the overhead lighting, increased pedestrian planning, and stormwater utility.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Derek. I'll just wrap up. You can look at our slides of the images that we used as inspiration from other successful projects of this type that mirror some of the remarks I've just said: the overhead lighting, the pavement textures, the creation of a downtown living room. And in that sense, the mayor of Durham, North Carolina, said something at a conference I attended that I've always held dear, that downtowns define communities like a living room defines your home. I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. College Square is our living room. It's just time to update the furniture. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have. And again, appreciate everything you're doing for this community.
Thank you, David. First up, we have Katrina, then Jeff.
Okay, I agree that College Square is a central point. This is a relatively high ticket item compared to some others we've seen. Can you discuss some ways that you might prioritize or draw down this project? Like, what would you include if you had to spend a little less?
That's a good question. I mean, like most project champions, I'm sure they all say, well, there's nothing I can trim down. The College Square is a defined area, and it's difficult to subdivide a defined area like College Square into smaller points. But I think probably the most important part is converting the current pavement into a plaza, patio, so to speak, and uprooting that asphalt and changing that into some type of paving system would be the most important, along with the plantings and the stormwater infrastructure. But we could scale back the project just to the 2 lanes and parking stalls within College Square, and that could perhaps save us some money. We did this project does envision a storefront to storefront redesign.
So for clarification, you're talking about just modifying where the vehicles used to be and focusing on improving that as a downsized version.
Much more articulate way of saying it. Thank you.
Sure. Jeff?
Yeah, hey David. Just to clarify, I thought I heard you say that the DOT doesn't allow overhead lighting, but
That's
if it's on
correct.
the street, who cares what the DOT thinks?
Well, I think that they'll always, that's true. And perhaps Athens-Clarke County could go through the abandonment process to abandon that street. I think there will always be a need for service and emergency vehicles to access that street. And it's for reasons of fire safety that the Georgia DOT has asked or dictated to municipalities to no longer put that kind of catenary system. That system was designed to go over Clayton Street, but we had to remove that.
If I may, I believe the fire code change that directs the removal of those activities or not allow those activities. It's fire code which would drive that.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I need some clarity on that. What kind of lights are we talking about here that aren't allowed?
It's the lights that you see. I don't know if you've ever been to Larimer Square in Denver, but many of these communities have placed festival lighting. I think it's called, it's that, let's see, there is an intelligent term for this, and I can't recall it right now. I've known it as catenary lighting. It's the same type of lighting that you would put over your patio, that type of thing. Festival lighting, I know it's called, but LED style light bulbs that would create an ambient atmosphere over the College Square. And we can still do that over the former sidewalks.
Okay, so like the string lighting.
String lighting, very good.
Yeah, so fancy string lighting.
Fancy string lighting.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mallory?
Hey, David. Thank you. I wondered if you could speak a little bit to how this project closes the equity gap in your mind by improving equitability and capital improvements across the entire community.
That's obviously a difficult question, and it's primarily why the commission is asking that. Downtown gets a lot of good stuff. Why should we put another project downtown? Downtown has been criticized by many as not being welcoming to people, as not being a place that everyone feels comfortable to gather. And I think that's largely based on the problems that all commercial districts have. The traditional reason for visiting a commercial district is based on a transactional one. You've come down to buy products from downtown. This plaza essentially creates a central park that everyone can feel comfortable in. You don't have to have a reason to visit. You don't need to feel like you're using up a particular restaurant's picnic table by sitting in it. And what the Downtown Development Authority has attempted to do is to create an atmosphere for a wide variety of events and festivals that attract all types of people downtown and increases that civic identity to everyone. And I think this project could add to that. If the question is more direct focused towards spreading the TSPLOST funds around to all areas of the community, I can only suggest that all roads lead to College Square, all roads lead to downtown, and that will strengthen our community and enhance the visibility of downtown to everyone.
Frank?
Yeah, how you doing, David? Good to see
I'm
you.
doing good, Lieutenant. How are you?
I'm good. When the Athens-Clarke County and City of Athens government unified, I was assigned as the downtown commander. And I can attest to the fact that that there were two concentrations of areas. That College Square was the biggest one, and the Georgia Theater was other. Not because there were problems, but there were huge crowds. And I think about all the events down there, the Christmas parade, that was the central point they used to pull a stage down there from the recreation department for events too. So I feel you. So this idea is not new, really. It's been formulating for years, but I do agree that College Square has become a political events, you name it. It's almost like an outdoor amphitheater at times too. But
I
it's busy. It is busy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Frank. Daryl?
Yes, this is my question. We have a lot of projects going, and it's a lot of places need to be fixed. I mean, if somewhere you sure there's no way that you can scale down some? Because what I'm looking at, I'm like, we're looking at all these projects, and there's a lot of projects that needs more help than almost probably more than downtown. What I'm saying is that can you think you can find another way? That, I mean, find some other funds to help us out a little bit on the situation.
I can't attest to that. I know that these figures were worked with the Clayton Street project in mind. That these are fairly these aren't conceptual figures. These are based on the experience of the Clayton Street construction project, and those construction expenses have skyrocketed. There's no question about that. We could design a smaller project. We could search for other funding sources, but I understand your dilemma. You have 90 projects in front of you, and they're all worthwhile.
David, is it all right if I add
Yes,
to that a
please.
little bit?
Yes, please.
So Daryl, I helped to develop that budget with the advice and guidance of our SPLOST office, who's currently doing Clayton Street. And Clayton Street has come in many phases, some of it done in-house and some of it done contracted. What you're seeing today, just the surface work that's being contracted, comes in at about $2 million per block. You add in the infrastructure that was done in a previous phase, and that was actually done with some staff that were added because we couldn't find people to reasonably bid on it. So there is a base cost to this, that if you're going to do a block, it is a multi-million-dollar project. However, if you look at that budget, there's a relatively high furniture and fixtures component to it. There's also, we went pretty high on the, I believe it's architecture and engineering, and that was in response to some expectations the commission identified. So there might be some trimming that can happen in the level of finishes that then could maybe be added in later on with grants and such. But fundamentally, there's going to be a fairly high fixed cost if you want to tackle a block downtown.
Thank you for that perspective, Andrew. I was also kind of wondering about the cost of this project and how it compared to Clayton Street.
That's the same thing I'm thinking about, Lauren. I'm looking at the cost. That's the main thing I'm looking at is the cost. I know it needs to be done, but the cost.
I understand. I feel like this College Square project will maximize the investment that you put on Clayton Street. It would understandably be a letdown if visitors and local residents alike were walking down this beautiful Clayton Street and then come to the College Square that we have now. But I understand full well that there are limited amount of funds that you're working with and a huge need. But thank you for that question.
Yeah, but what you said right there kind of got a little bit underneath my skin, because you're saying that, to me, you're saying that to beautify that area is not important in the areas that that's already up here that been needing stuff for 15, 20, 30 years. So what you're telling me is that you're looking more about beautifying that area, and all these other projects on here. You feel I'm going at for what you're saying?
Sure, I understand that, and I apologize for giving you that impression, but please understand, we all stand determined on where we sit, and I sit as a co-director of the Downtown Development Authority. So, my emphasis is downtown. I feel that a healthy downtown creates a healthy community, but I understand that there's lots of worthwhile projects out there.
I got you. I understand. I understand what you're saying.
And, to be fair, our presenters are just presenting their projects. They're not, comparing their projects with other projects as they're coming forth with their visions for a better Athens-Clarke County. That's our tough job right there.
No, I wasn't comparing. I just said, when he said, he understand. We got a good understanding. I understand what he was saying now, but it just went a way that I was like, wait a minute, hold on. But I'm okay with that. I understand what you're saying, Mr. David.
All right, thank you.
All right. I'm finished with my question. I regress.
Yeah, thank you. So we have just another minute. I'm going to, I know some of you also have your hands raised, but I'm going to go ahead and just conclude this with Rocky because he hasn't had a chance to speak yet, and then we'll move on to our next presentation. But feel free to keep talking in the chat.
Yeah, my question is simple, and it might be resolved in public input if the project were to be approved. Anyway, a recommendation, an amphitheater type outdoor performance space in the conception. Is that something that's been considered? And then I don't see a public art line item piece to it.
The public art piece would be included in any project such as this. I believe the budget for that is 200,000. I can be stand corrected. I don't have the budget right in front of me, but in all TSPLOST and TSPLOST related projects, there'll be a certain amount of public art, and in this case for College Square, most likely even more than what's required.
There's a line item for public art in the application.
Sorry, I missed that. Thank you for the clarification. What about my point to amphitheater or some type of performance space, because Athens is known for its music?
Well, the concept does call, this particular concept from the consultant does call for tiered bench seating that would allow, for those types of venues, give people lots of flexible spacing for seating. There's these boulder type chairs and just bench seating along the sides of the square itself.
All right, David, thank you. And thank you, Andrew, for also being here to present your vision of College Square. I met up with a friend today and we didn't even pick a restaurant. We just said, let's meet at College Square and go from there. So definitely a central place.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Take care, David. Good to see you.
Yeah, and thank you, committee members, for the great discussion and great questions. So next, we have project number 85, Atlanta Highway / West Broad Street Bike and Pedestrian Improvements, submitted by the Athens in Motion Commission. I believe we have Carly here tonight. Carly, can you hear us?
Yes, hello.
Hello, Carly. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little nervous.
You don't need to be worried. I mean, we don't bite too hard. We're just transportation geeks, So are you going to pedal this presentation, or would you like for Derek to do that?
Derek, if you could, that would be great, please. Thank you. So, hello, and thank you guys for listening. I'm here to talk about the Athens in Motion Commission proposal for bicycle and pedestrian facilities on Atlanta Highway and West Broad Street. which will enable more people to reach their destinations safely without needing access to a car, and completes a critical thoroughfare for active transportation. So who am I? I'm Carly Evans. I'm here as an Athens resident. I'm also an avid biker and hiker and walker. And I'm also a member of the Athens in Motion Commission. Additionally, I'm a member of the Oconee River Greenway Commission, and I actually serve on the Athens in Motion Commission as the Greenway liaison. So I was appointed to sort of represent the Greenway on the Athens in Motion Commission. I completed a Master's of Public Administration and Policy from UGA in 2019. And actually, while there, I proposed some research regarding the equitability of the Greenway, and specifically thinking about gentrification caused by the Greenway. Evidently, my questions asked did not turn off the executive committee, because I was, asked to join. So I'm very grateful for that. But I say that to say that my first priority upon joining both commissions has been to fight for equitability across the board. And my endorsement of this proposal is centered on equity concerns. This proposal is absolutely needed for transit-reliant communities along the West Broad corridor, and we have the opportunity to provide the much-needed dignifying facilities that are currently blatantly missing. So what exactly are we proposing? Facilities improvements along the Atlanta Highway and West Broad corridor from Alps and Hancock to Timothy Road and Mitchell Bridge. We want to create continuous sidewalk along both sides of the entire corridor, creating access to every single transit stop along the corridor. We propose that one side of that connected sidewalk is actually a multi-use path, which will provide safer access to those on wheels, bikers, and those with limited mobility. And it will not only provide increased access to numerous businesses along the corridor, but also provide much needed access to green space through connections with proposed future Greenway segments and to the future Beach Haven Park site. A second option is for continuous sidewalk along both sides of the corridor, and then a separated two-way bike path on one side of the road. So that's rather than multi-use path, but that is, our first hope, and that'll come down to public input and determinations of an engineer. But both options provide for both pedestrian and bicycle facilities along the entire corridor. Next slide, please. So this is a tier 1 project from the Athens in Motion master plan, which was approved by Mayor and Commission in 2018 and is the master plan for bike and ped for Athens-Clarke County. The AIM plan envisions a community where all forms of transportation, walking, cycling, rolling, driving, and using transit are valued equally, can be pursued safely, and are a tool for addressing inequities. Next, please. Some goals and objectives of the Athens in Motion master plan include creating a connected network, low stress facilities, and providing safe access to facilities for all citizens. Next, please. So Atlanta Highway welcomes 30K drivers to Athens daily, and West Broad Street becomes essentially Athens' main street, running straight through downtown, running right into that, potential new site downtown we just heard about. And Athens has shown that this corridor is a priority through the 2019 Connect Athens corridor study, for which Atlanta Highway corridor was central to. And this proposal is directly informed from that 2019 study. Next, please. So as I just said, Atlanta Highway is the major east-west thoroughfare into the heart of Athens. It's lined by transit stops along both sides of the entire corridor. And additionally, it is a major commercial corridor. It's currently completely unsafe for transit users to reach their stops on foot or especially by bicycle. And there are no safe travel lanes for bicycle users along any point of the corridor. And additionally, there's a massive sidewalk deficit. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here's the map to show the sidewalk deficit. The sidewalk deficit map slide, please. So No purple line means no sidewalk. So as you can see, the gaps are really tremendous, both in length and in number. Next slide. So here you can see a sidewalk that leads straight into a drainage ditch. Sidewalks along this, by the way, this corridor is 2.7 miles long. Sidewalks along the entire 2.7 miles often end in ditches or tall weeds, or they turn into goat paths, or what we call desire paths, because they show a need or desire for sidewalk in that location. And there are additionally many dangerous crossings throughout the corridor. This leaves transit users to face unnecessary daily hardships and indignities and completely prevents bikers from traveling safely along the corridor. Next slide, please. Here's a map of the transit stops. So you can see there are many. There are 16 transit stops just in this one project scope, in this one 2.7 mile segment. 16 transit stops which line both sides of the corridor. Next slide, please. So we've invested in so many fun bus shelters along this area, but not in the facilities and infrastructure to allow users to safely access these structures. As you can see, there's a lack of sidewalk to and from all of these shelters. Next slide, please. Transit users have to walk through mud and grass to get to bus stations. Walking along the entire corridor is objectively dangerous, and biking is nearly impossible. This corridor has been identified by Athens in Motion as a bike comfort level 4 or 5, which means even expert level bicyclists are uncomfortable attempting to ride along this corridor. And as you can see, even waiting at a bus station can be dangerous along this area. But with the right infrastructure, like a multi-use path off the road, transit users could be away from the 45-mile-per-hour traffic and safely access their stops. Next slide, please. So what do we propose? Here's a map of the option 1 for facilities improvements along this corridor. A multi-use path, and that's the purple line, along the north side, and a continuous sidewalk, which is the blue line, along the south side. The proposed cost of this option is very steep. We recognize that. This is a major corridor and would require some pretty major changes. The proposed cost is about $5.2 million for 2.7 miles of connected infrastructure along this highly commercial and heavily used corridor. Next, please. So how does this project close the equity gap? It would provide safe access to the 16 otherwise disconnected transit stops along the corridor. It would expand the travel range for residents with limited or no access to cars. It would make it safer and easier for residents to reach employment and commerce destinations. This proposal additionally meets the Athens in Motion equity selection criteria. If you can go to the next slide, which include the public sidewalk to road ratio, bus service coverage area, households with no vehicle, population commuting by public transit, percent in poverty over 65, and percent in poverty under 18. It also takes land use into consideration. So for example, proximity to schools and parks and businesses. Next, please. This project meets almost all of the Mayor and Commission approved strategic commitments. As you can see, it meets all but 3. Next, please. So this project will improve all aspects of the triple bottom line. It will positively impact economic prosperity by increasing access to businesses for more residents, and it will make it easier for residents to reach employment. Will also positively impact social well-being by providing infrastructure needed to increase workforce housing, and will expand and improve equitable access to public facilities and infrastructure across the community. It also will positively impact the environment by providing alternative transportation for short car trips, which are proven to be highly polluting, for this densely populated area in this commercial corridor, which will also enhance the quality of natural areas nearby. And it'll also provide access to outdoor recreation through a connection to the future Beach Haven Park, which I mentioned. Its Beach Haven site is one of the most ecologically and culturally rich green spaces in Athens-Clarke County, and studies have shown that access to green spaces has a directly positive impact on mental health. And so that's one other way that this project can provide for social and mental well-being. Next slide, please.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. This is a breakdown of the Athens in Motion Commission's public input opportunities. So this plan would be strictly following this breakdown if provided funding. And so transit users and residents along the West Broad corridor will be centered in the decision-making process if this project is funded. Next, please. So thank you so much for your time and consideration. I hope I can answer your questions. I do have Daniel Sizemore is in here. He's our sort of staff liaison for the Athens in Motion Commission, and he may be able to answer better than I can, but I'm going to try. Thank you.
Thank you, Carly. We already have some hands up. Jeremy, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of curious as to how I noticed anybody that drives down the Atlanta Highway and Broad Street in this area notices people, crossing at horrendous places, some within, 25 yards of a crosswalk. And I think a lot of it has to do with where the bus stops are actually located. I know it doesn't say it in the brief project description, but you have some language in there describing, some improved safety for crossing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Sure. So that would really come down to sort of the engineer at the time. And once we can do a further study to determine exactly where those crossings would be needed, that would help sort of identify exactly where we want to do these or work to create better crossings. I do know there is actually another proposal, I believe, that maybe somebody else may be able to speak to better. I'm trying to find it in my notes, but there is another proposal for this corridor that focuses more on safe crossings. So we certainly want to provide safe crossings, especially on the south side where the Epps Bridge comes in. The sidewalk will maybe have a little bit of a break, and so if we can provide safe crossings, then that disruption of continuous sidewalk would not have as big of an impact. There would still be a safe way to travel.
And just to piggyback off of that, to piggyback off of that, some of those the intersection crossing locations, the improvements that we talk about in the project, those could be pedestrian islands kind of within those interchanges. If someone doesn't quite make it all the way across, if they're kind of slower mobility or reduced mobility and they can't make it all the way across the whole intersection, there would be more of those types of things. In terms of people kind of running across the road, it's hard to know the reasons for it. I think you point out a good observation that it is kind of near those bus stops, and so we could work with transit to kind of relocate those closer to an intersection if that's something that needs to be done. Ultimately, this whole project and the corridor itself would go through a lot of traffic analysis, and we're also exploring some new types of data collection, which actually allow us to set up cameras at the intersections and kind of look up the street a little bit. And it doesn't only look at the number of cars crossing, it's also looking at, how many people are crossing outside of the crosswalk, how many people are running red lights, how many close calls are there. And so, we're really looking at how can we expand our data collection to capture those things that, it's one thing to see crash reports. It's another thing to be able to watch a video of someone walking 130 feet across a road at an angle across multiple lanes of traffic, and then identifying point of origin and where they're going, and then how can we design and engineer a solution that would, kind of keep them crossing at the, locations that would be designed for that.
Jeff, did you have your hand up?
No, I didn't. I left it up. I'm sorry.
just checking in. So we have some other folks. Patrina?
Okay. I think this is a very important throughway. There's probably like a very high volume of cars and people that go through here. I'm looking at the cost of it, and I'm trying to balance out like, how many people are coming through versus how much this cost. So I do know this area is busy and has high volume. But would it be possible to pare back a little on the cost of this process?
Right. So we know every single submission has been asked this question, and so that our sort of amendment, where Athens in Motion is still working on that, on exactly how we could potentially, pare down, or what we're thinking really is to try to propose doing this sort of in segments, like maybe we ask for funding right now for just the multi-use path, which would in itself solve a lot of these initial issues. And that would be just on the north side, with a follow-up plan in TSPLOST in 5 years to work on continuous sidewalk along the south side. That, I can't speak directly to what our amendment will be because we haven't decided as a commission yet, but we're certainly thinking through this, and we believe that there may be some ways to try to pare down, but as you said, this is such a major corridor, and it will require a lot of significant impact that will cost a lot of money. So, we're working through that, but we understand this is an expensive project, and we're not going to be able to, cut it in half. Like we're going to do what we can, but this budget represents the scope of the project.
Daryl?
Yes, I was looking at how the highway goes, and I'm looking at, is it between Epps and Atlanta Highway, that the overpath and underpath that crosses over there. I'm trying to figure out how you're going to use that with that area for bikes. Coming across that area right there, because you're talking about Atlanta Highway meeting Elks Bridge. Is probably one of the most dangerous and most used roads coming in towards going to downtown and other areas coming off of the loop.
Yeah.
My other question, that's gonna be a serious problem unless you can figure out that, like some cities do, they use the middle, where the railings is, where most people go and park off. They use that as bike areas instead of, from where the crevices are. They use those areas as bike areas. They widen it out so, bikers could go down instead of them having to cross over the highway. Maybe you might look into that with Georgia Department of Transportation. And my other part is that Atlanta Highway is also considered 78, and 78 is considered a state highway. So you should be able to get some funding from the state because that is a state highway. So you also could look into that to help you all, to come off with your costs, because a lot of our cities in Georgia doesn't look at the idea that most of their areas do have come into state highways, and sometimes the state, if they can get away with it, they ain't gonna do their part. But you know how that go. But that was my only concerns, was the part right there by Epps Bridge, that area right there, and the idea that since once you cross over to Broad Street into Atlanta Highway, that's considered 78. Even though it's business 78, it's still part of the state highway. So you might also, check into that with the GODT, that it might cut your costs down a lot if you go and check it. You might want to look into that and see how it goes too. It helps us all the way around. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a great point.
Yeah.
We definitely plan on reaching out to GDOT to make sure that, you know, I can tell you, I just got an email actually today about a roadway safety audit that GDOT is performing on this section around that Alps intersection, which is really great. I mean, so they've already identified it as a point of concern, and that's for later this month. But so I think that is a possibility. The main goal of creating this scope is kind of that initial look at what would we want, you know, and we kind of felt like the separated facility with the multi-use path on the north side is something that really, like, I don't, you know, we didn't feel like you could even start to be comfortable, even if you put bike lanes in along the roadway, it wouldn't reduce that level of comfort down enough, because I can tell you I'm not going to ride on those bike lanes. And so you really have to be separated, and we kind of felt like along with Lexington Road, and so you can probably see some similarities between these two projects, that multi-use path on one side, the sidewalk completion on the other. You know, we're really looking at closing in those gaps, creating that connectivity. But then, you know, we're not going to necessarily have that initial bike count that you would say, oh, well, there's a lot of cyclists out there, because it's not comfortable enough for them to ride. And so, you know, it's like, how many people crossed over this river before we put a bridge in, you know? So I think that's something to keep in mind there.
And
But
Daryl, to your first
like
point about avoiding Epsbridge, so the north side, as you can see on the map, is, you know, the opposite side of where Epsbridge comes in. So that it is possible to have a multi-use path.
Right.
And then, as you can see from the map, the blue, you know, the sidewalk portion, there is a gap. There will still be a gap where Epsbridge is, because that will have to be in coordination with GDOT.
Correct. That was my question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Daryl, you and I are on the same page. How do we get the state involved? We're, you know, thinking alike.
We gotta get them involved with everything.
Yeah, I mean, so I like Keith told us last night, or yeah, I guess it was last night, they have their own list of projects and it's full, and it's some of those projects have been on there for decades. So what SPLOST allow us to do is make our local projects a priority. So we'll go to Frank and then Alan, and we'll close the discussion. Frank?
Yeah, I think that between Daniel and Daryl, they covered what I was going to say. Atlanta Highway is going to always be Atlanta Highway, and I as much as I look at the cost of some of these presentations, I can't get the cop out of me. I also think about safety. Alps and Broad has traditionally been one of the highest crash areas in Athens-Clarke County. Hopefully something, I think I heard somebody say that GDOT had that intersection targeted, but it's going to always be Atlanta Highway 78, and I think about safety as much as I do the improvements. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Frank. And, you know, I saw John's comment about number of average daily transit users or number of pedestrians daily, and I wish I had those numbers on hand. I think, you know, anecdotally from spending time out there, we can all agree it's very heavily used, both by transit users, pedestrians, and then, you know, the vehicle daily travel is huge. So yeah.
Yeah, for the transit user question, if you put in a request on the spreadsheet, transit could get those numbers for you pretty easily. So Vic can help y'all with that. And I mean, you brought up a good point, Frank. You know, it's always going to be Atlanta Highway. We all know that it needs to be safer. And while this seems like a really large amount of money, you know, if we just keep kicking the can down the road, that amount of money just keeps growing, because these things get more and more expensive. And you know, it's easy to kind of think back, man, if we had gotten into 2005 SPLOST and put this forward, it would have been so much cheaper. But I'm sure they're going to be saying the same thing about us in the 2030 SPLOST looking back.
All right, Alan, will you close this out?
Yeah, and I guess I've got more of a comment. I have not too unfrequently walked from City Hall for mayor and commission meetings back to my house on Timothy Road on this road. And there is a sidewalk all the way from downtown until you get to where the blind pig is, kind of stops at that point. But then after that, there is on the opposite side of the street, very well established goat paths that are used very frequently by people. And there's the Sycamore Drive Road, whatever it is, neighborhood, which is definitely an underserved area that does not have sidewalk in that area. And I've tried to walk the other direction from the racetrack gas station up to Target, and I'll never do that again because, yeah, crossing that Epps Bridge section there is a nightmare. Thank you. That is just a comment.
Appreciate that, Alan. Yeah, those on the ground experience. And yeah, the folks who are getting by, and crossing the street, it's not just 2 lanes or 4 lanes, it's 6+ turn lanes. So it's definitely not a great experience. Ooh,
Yeah,
all right.
anecdotally, I just want to throw in a similar experience. I was on a roadway safety audit out at Sycamore a couple of years ago, and while we were up at the intersection, we actually saw somebody. Basically, he either, I can't remember where he was coming from. He either hopped off a bus or came from the neighborhood, and he kind of ran out across the street and then walked down that center concrete median, and we could see him for a good 10-15 minutes out in the blazing sun, and it was because it was the safest place to walk across the bridge there. And so you definitely we have plenty of pedestrians using the space. We'd like to really bring some improvements.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Carly, and thank you, Daniel, for being on standby to help with questions. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, Carly.
And time for our next project, and we'll take a short break after this one. This is project number 19, Transportation Partners Lifecycle Program, and I believe Andrew is presenting this one. Andrew?
Yes, good evening. I'm back again.
Back.
Appreciate your time. You all are gluttons for punishment, so I will certainly honor the time commitments that you've all asked for and not take it one moment later. I am Andrew Saunders. I'm the director of the Central Services Department. It's a pretty terrible name, if we're being honest, Central Services. Nobody knows what we do, but the reality is we're the hands and feet of government, so we keep other departments running. Some of our biggest divisions include facilities maintenance, fleet management, and landscape management. It's about 100 people. And as a part of those programs, we manage life cycle on behalf of our customers. And so life cycle projects we'll get into here in a minute, but they're what really keep things going for the unified government. We are bringing forward a proposal of almost $13 million to reinvest in existing assets. Yes, this might be the most boring proposal you'll hear all day. I don't have a city square to offer you or a shiny trail, but what I do have to ask for is just a fundamental commitment to good government and the idea that we're going to continue to honor those commitments that we've made through previous actions. So we looked at our capital programs and we identified those people and departments that we support that are involved in transportation. And then we looked at what are the liabilities that are on the books over the duration of TSPLOST of capital assets and their needs. And you can see those partners presented below. So 12.75 million, what would that buy us? The first would involve facility equipment and paving. So examples of facility equipment that we regularly invest in would be roofs, HVAC, some exterior painting from time to time, boilers, vehicle lifts, things of that nature. Basically any asset that should last 15 plus years. And I come with really a terrible story, y'all. I come with the idea that we have a tremendous backlog as a government and one where the bill is coming due. So it's not all that dissimilar from maybe what you've already heard related to pavement or a pipe replacement. Those same liabilities exist for us. And what happens when we cannot replace those facilities, we see increased maintenance cost, we see inefficiency in the buildings and environmental damage, and we also get facility downtime from time to time where we have to close a facility or a building because it no longer can operate until we can provide maintenance. There are a mix of funds currently allocated to this. So there is actually some SPLOST 2020 funds that were dedicated to broad facility life cycle. Unfortunately, those were pared back significantly, and you can see that we currently have an unfunded backlog of $3.7 million as a government. Over the next 5 years, we're projecting that we need $18.9 million to honor those commitments. And so we have identified $3.2 million that could be used for this. And as the former sustainability officer for Athens-Clarke County, I really want to hammer home that much like conservation is better than producing a new renewable asset, it's better to conserve the one you've got. Capital reinvestment is a sustainability action. We cannot look towards things like electric vehicles and solar and energy efficiency until we're at the point where we're kind of changing these assets in their life cycles. The next item that we have is our public safety radios. An equally sad story here. So we have a very comprehensive 800 megahertz radio system used by fire and police, but it's also used by folks like transit and public works. And while day to day they might use tablets and cell phones and radios, what we know is during an emergency, this is the core backbone of how government provides service. So when the grid is down, when your cell phone system's not working, whatever the emergency du jour is, this is how we communicate and how we make sure that citizens are healthy and safe. And along those same lines, you can see an example of our handheld radios there in the bottom left corner. It really is a technology product. So think of it as a more durable version of your cell phone. Right now, we are funding that needs to last 37 years. So think about what your phone looked like. You didn't even have a cell phone 37 years ago. What did your phone look like 37 years ago? Unfortunately, Motorola, the provider of the equipment, estimates that they should last 10 years or so. Our staff believes 12 years with the good maintenance we're providing them. So pretty big gap there of liabilities coming due. And then vehicles. This is a really chronic issue for us, vehicles and equipment. And you'll see equally large and impressive backlogs here. So looking at about a $7 million bill that is due and quite a few coming in. And again, there's high inefficiencies. There's really significant vehicle downtime. It is not uncommon. We have a vehicle right now from Public Works. It is no longer fit for service and we don't have the money to replace it. So they're just out the asset, which means that everything becomes more inefficient on the services that they're providing. And the commission did, in this most recent budget, initiate a cycle for facility maintenance and fleet capital life cycle to begin a 5-year funding path that would actually meet our liabilities in 10. So we're going to grow over 5, and that'll pay off what we need by 10. Again, a lot of the same things. So think about it. Here's a point I would ask many of you without a show of hands. Who in here drives a vehicle older than a 2002 model as their daily driver? Because a 2002 was the average age of the vehicles we took out of service for life cycle replacement for our transportation partners last year. So you're looking at 19 or so years, 18 and 19 years of age on those assets. They are road hard. They are literally junk piles by the time we're done with them. And you'll see a really significant backlog here. So this is one of our biggest asks, or is our biggest ask. And you'll see an example of how that's used. So in the bottom, you've got what we call a grade-all. It's basically an enormous shovel on a very large chassis, and they use that to prepare stormwater projects, to clean out culverts and bridges, to do some light grading for roads and sidewalks and things of that nature. So we see this as diversified quite a bit across our fleet. Now that I've terrified you and shamed us all, we'll kind of connect it to those bigger pictures. So this is aligned with our comprehensive plan from 2018. The comprehensive plan has multiple efforts that talk about repairing and replacing infrastructure and expanding things related to transportation assets and fiber and technology. And really, these are the tools that it's going to take to do it. And also that reference to energy efficiency and overall efficiency and effectiveness of government. Again, this is what we take to do it. Looking at the selection criteria, we feel like we meet quite a few of them. So when you're looking at pavement maintenance, sidewalks and trails, anytime you need to repave a road, you're going to have a vehicle to do it. Anytime you're planning these sidewalks or these projects that y'all been reviewing today, it takes a facility to do it. It takes a place that our staff can come in dependably, and they need to have the radios and equipment to get those projects done. So it does help to work off those deficits, but it also provides us with an opportunity to do better. So when you're looking at replacing a vehicle, that would be the time that we would look to electric or hybrid vehicle instead of the gas or diesel engine that's coming out. When we are replacing roofs, it's becoming very common practice for us that we pair that with some energy efficiency upgrades and come in behind it with solar. And so while solar is not in this budget, there is a SPLOST 2020 project of multi-million dollars that has been a strong sustainer in that space. And then tying into the equity gap, the assets go everywhere. They service everyone. Obviously, you all have come to understand through this program that unfortunately those assets maybe aren't equally distributed as it relates to sidewalks or pavement or other individual items in the community. But you'll see that significant expenses for transit, significant expenses for public works and traffic engineering. And so I have what is really a simple example here, which is right now, this is the path we're on in the bottom left, which is we are proposing that we're going to do continued transportation projects through SPLOST or TSPLOST. Those can involve both new and existing projects. And when we look at our life cycle programs, we have the existing general fund contributions, and we know that we have to grow those contributions by approximately $3 million per year over the next 5 years. And so that is $3 million that is coming out of our taxpayers' pockets through fees and property tax assessments. It is also, if you wanted to flip that coin, it is $3 million that is not available for housing or business development or parks or any of those other things people like from government. And so if we are able to divert that, what we basically do is decrease our overall general fund liabilities by $2.2 million a year if this was fully funded. To give you some equivalency, that is the equivalent of reducing our millage rate by 0.45 mils, which would be consistent with some of the largest tax reductions that have been implemented by this government. So we got to, unfortunately, these are going to be paid one way or another, or we're going to reduce services. And that's a tough position for us to be in. Economic prosperity. So we talked about, really, this is about not only keeping money in people's pockets and not increasing the tax burden, but also having the tools available to provide those transportation assets that are positive to our economy.
1 minute remaining.
I only need 45 seconds. We've definitely covered the environmental assets and how systematic life cycle replacement supports the environment. And overall, our community depends on these assets pretty uniformly. So we feel that there's a social component to it. Our overall budget is here, and you can see that we are, again, going to be a net negative reduction or total reduction on the operating impacts. With that, I will minimize my presentation and field some questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Teresa, did you have your hand up first, I believe?
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the great job you're doing. And it really makes me feel good as a taxpayer that we have such great staff and leadership in Athens-Clarke. So this question is going to sound a little funny, but are you asking for enough money with this budget?
Well, it is not enough to meet all of our liabilities. But what we have presented to you is the full suite of 5-year liabilities and backlog for transportation. So okay. What could qualify is in this proposal.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, and Andrea?
Yeah, my question was about, first of all, I was thought maybe I was reading it wrong. So when it's 2.2 million that would be saved on an annual basis.
Yes and no. So currently, the government has restored a funding path that is providing some funding from our transportation departments for these needs. So there is some reduction that could come out of the budget. However, they've also committed to growing that path over 5 years to meet our liabilities. So it's a 2.2 annual operating avoidance. So if this isn't funded through TSPLOST, just these assets alone are going to run us $2.2 million a year.
So just to make sure that I'm fully understanding, like the money that would be, because it looks like the operating savings isn't, it says savings, and usually we're seeing costs.
Right.
It's not stuff that we could have to use for youth development programming or parks or something like that. It's kind of committed to transportation.
Well, let me put it this way. I'll try to simplify it as much as I understand. If I have a credit card bill and I'm paying $100 a month, but my accountant tells me, well, I have to pay $300 a month, and then my rich aunt comes in and picks up that bill for me. I have $100 a month that I can move somewhere else, but I also have avoided the $300 a month that I need to be paying. So we are asking for our rich aunt to come visit. The mayor and commission could repurpose those savings wherever they see fit. So either reduce the tax liability for our citizens or reallocate those general fund dollars to any purpose that they manage, whether it be parks, pipes, police, you name it, we need it. So that's why there's 10 elected officials.
Nice. Jeremy, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry if I skipped over you. Okay. Frank.
I got maybe a couple of specific questions. When you talk about 800 megahertz radios, are you talking about replacement handhelds for support people like public works, or are you talking about police, or all of the above?
It is predominantly within public work, some of our landscape staff, and transit, users like that. We have been pretty cautious with police and fire in this budget because we're trying to stay true to the transportation component. So
sure.
we have included the heat units, the traffic enforcement units in our budget, right, but we've been pretty minimal with the other needs that they have.
Well, now, if I'm not mistaken, the state of Georgia funded those first initial heat vehicles, didn't they?
They did.
They ain't gonna furnish no more, though, right?
You know, whether it's the state of Georgia heat program or it's the COPS program at the federal level, they tend to really like to plant seeds for future needs, but they don't come back to water them so much.
I got you. Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Darryl, I was trying to help you out, bro.
Additional questions for Andrew?
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Doing a great job, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
I mean, I hate to ask this, but we've been asking a lot of presenters this, which is, you know, your top priority. What is your top priority?
Do you mean within this proposal or across what our department has submitted?
In this proposal, please.
The top priority would be within the vehicle needs. We're really behind on our fleet, especially the specialty equipment related to transportation.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Go right ahead.
The vehicle replacement program out there, where is that?
You mean like what you might have been familiar with when you worked with the government?
Yeah.
It's also a sad story. So about 5 years ago, there was approximately $11 million in the government piggy bank for vehicles.
Uh-huh.
And two decisions were made simultaneously. One is there was a spin down, so they went ahead and started to accelerate the replacement of vehicles and equipment.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in anticipation of SPLOST 2020, the commission and manager's office temporarily suspended contributions to that, initially with public safety partners and then all general fund partners. So that put about a $2.5 million deficit into that.
Deficit. Okay.
Today, we're sitting at around $1 million, and that is used almost predominantly to address vehicles that are involved in accidents.
Okay. Got you covered. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that. And thank you for answering that question. Wow, government spending, budgeting, it's pretty complicated. I think we're all getting kind of a crash course.
It is.
For even additional insight we didn't have before. All right. Thanks again, Andrew.
Have a good evening.
So committee members, we will take a 5-minute break here before we bring back North Athens projects. So see you at 7:20. And please remember, we are still live. We are recording, so make sure that you're mute if you don't want to be heard, and your video is off if you do not want to be seen for 5 minutes. Thank you. Summoning the committee. That committee. I'm all alone.
Don't you have to make like some chalk marks on the floor to summon the committee?
Yes.
I was going to suggest turning on my let's see, I got to mute extra. There you go. Turning on my my microphone when 2 Chinook helicopters flew over my house during somebody's presentation. I think that would have been great.
They came over my house too.
Wow.
They made a racket.
Well, as other people come back online, I am so hungry. I thought my big lunch would hold me over, but it has not. And I want you guys to know that back in the day, back in my day of SPLOSTs, Keith and Derek would feed us. We would meet in person and get fed.
You know, y'all got my address if you want to send some food over here.
No, we can do delivery.
Eat. COVID has put a damper on a lot of things, hasn't it?
It sure has.
Yeah.
Sure has.
That we can't sit down and have lunch.
But cases are going down. My wife was just checking the stats, and cases are
Oh, yeah.
dramatically declining.
Yes. Yes, thank God.
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe if we get to meet in person, maybe we'll get to eat together.
Yeah.
Great.
My poor daughter, she's a second grade teacher in Stockbridge, and she got sick last year. She caught shingles, COVID, and pneumonia. But she never had to be hospitalized, and she recovered good. And so,
Oh my gosh.
yes.
Wow.
How long was
Ooh.
she out, Frank?
Uh,
How long was she out of the classroom?
about a month.
Gee.
Yeah, but she's strong otherwise, but it just hit her all at one time.
Yeah. Father's daughter.
Uh-huh.
Father's
Daddy's only
daughter.
girl. Yep. My 41-year-old baby.
All right, y'all. Thanks for sticking around. And I know it's been a pretty long week, so we're in the final stretch. And to round us out for the night, our friends Fred Smith and First Quezon Payne and Buck Bacon are back to hang with us. They'll get us through the night. Welcome back.
Right on, right on.
They always do.
Well, Quezon and Fred are running a little bit behind, and I'm reporting live from Orlando, Florida tonight. I'm on vacation, so they'll be joining us shortly.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's see here. I can do this. So Buck, do you want to, since you're part of all three of these, is there any one of them that you would prefer to start first over the others?
Yeah, we can move forward with the North Athens projects. It's the same order that's on the agenda would be fine.
All right. So next on the list, project number 52, North Athens neighborhood traffic and speed safety.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. So project number 52, North Athens neighborhood traffic and speed safety. This is very similar to what we presented to you guys last night in regards to East Athens, except that this addresses the North Athens area of town. So our project scope is to provide greater speed enforcement and reduced speeds in the neighborhood streets located in North Athens, which include Pittard Road, Smoky Road, Brittany Acres, Danielsville Road, Kenwood Drive, Monty Drive, Birkeland Drive, Fowler Drive, Freeman Drive, Mercer, Kevin, and Catalpa. So we would
asked that along the Pittard, Smoky, Brittany, and Danielsville roads that we install speed enforcement or traffic surveillance cameras along these stretches of street. And then along these streets listed here, we would ask that that staff conduct a speed study and if recommended, install speed tables along each one of these streets. So that's really short and sweet. Like we've shared with you guys before, we think that these projects close the equity gap in the ways listed here. We do feel like North Athens is a traditionally underserved area of the community. We do think that by addressing speed and conditions along these streets would improve health and safety and improve traffic circulation and speed regulation. And we think that this will improve the quality of life for residents along these streets because it will improve their day-to-day experiences in their neighborhood. So we think that this meets the Mayor and Commission's strategic commitments by providing equitable investments of capital improvements throughout the community and promoting health and safety by reducing speed and creating safer community streets. And we also think that triple bottom line, we think that it improves economic prosperity. It impacts social well-being, obviously by creating safer streets. We create greater opportunities for these residents in underserved areas of the community. We think by creating the safer streets, by reducing speeds, we will reduce bodily harm and significant and long-lasting impacts on the families living in these communities. And we think that this will promote safer streets and equitable access to public facilities. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Buck. Frank has his hand up. Frank, please.
This terminology used throughout this funding for enforcement. What does that mean, number one? And the second question is speed studies. Who does that? Traffic engineering? How? Tell me about those two things there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So traffic studies or speed studies would be conducted by a traffic engineer. So either that's done with the traffic engineering department or an independent consultant.
Okay.
And then your other question, Frank, it kind of broke up a little bit. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, it says funding for speed enforcement.
Right. Yeah. So the idea would be that we would install radar signs that would read the speed of the passing vehicles and alert them to that they were speeding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions from the committee for Buck? Any discussion? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Do you have a parable that you can relay from Quezon?
I don't have a sermon to deliver tonight.
Darn. Well, I'm sure he'll forgive you for that. John does have his hand up.
Yep. I do have a question about traffic studies. We had a traffic study done in our neighborhood, and traffic engineering did it after we got a neighborhood petition asking them to do it. Have you all looked at that possibility as a way to basically shove the cost off on traffic engineering instead of having to take it from this project?
So I don't know. We haven't really asked traffic engineering to provide those studies. I think we had anticipated that similar to any other TSPLOST project, that an individual consultant would prepare the
the studies or necessary design.
Okay, thanks, Bud.
But John, if they're willing to volunteer, we'll let them have it.
They don't volunteer. You have to pretty much frog march them into it. But they will do it if, if more than half. I think it's more than half the residents along the street have to petition and sign a petition saying we want a traffic study. Then I think they're obligated to do it. At least that's my recollection of how we worked that.
Yeah, that's the neighborhood traffic management program, right? Which there might still be a little bit of money left over from that from SPLOST 2011. Is that what Keith said? So to be fair, I don't think that there's a whole lot of funding left, but I always get kind of lost on that particular project or effort. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and move on to the next project. Buck, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So this is project number 53, North Athens Neighborhood Pittard Road Bus Shelters.
Awesome. So yeah, project number 53. Our project scope, our goal, we want to improve access to bus routes and also improve bus shelters along the North Athens circulation bus route. And so again, really simple. We had talked briefly when we discussed some of the other projects, the north side circulatory transit route. However, if you can see on this map, that's the light blue route, and it goes along Old Hull Road and along Voyles Road, but it does not continue along Highway 72. And so what we're asking is that circulatory bus route be extended along Highway 72 beyond Voyles Road to the intersection of Highway 72 and Pittard Road. And then we would also ask that a new bus shelter be placed at the intersection to allow riders covered access outside of the weather. So once again, we do believe that this closes the equity gap because we believe that the North Athens neighborhood is a traditionally underserved area of the community. We think that investing in this infrastructure will address accessibility issues and gaps in connectivity within the North Athens neighborhood and throughout the community as a whole. We think that this investment in infrastructure also increases access to and enhances the experience for local public transit ridership. And we also think that this will greatly improve residents' access to community facilities and resources and other commercial centers. We think that by encouraging residents along Pittard Road to use public transit, we think that this will reduce pavement maintenance deficits by encouraging alternative modes of transportation. By its very nature, we are promoting an upgrade or continued use of alternative transportation facilities. And we think that this increases access to existing public facilities by creating connectivity between Pittard Road and the rest of the community via public transit. So we think that this addresses the Mayor and Commission's approved strategic commitments and project selection criteria by encouraging the use of the transit system, improving pedestrian access to transit facilities, and we also believe that this increases capital for transit services and expands the transit system. And by doing so, we think that it improves air quality, reduces vehicle miles traveled, traffic congestion, and reduces time spent traveling in vehicles. So our triple bottom line, we think that this positively impacts economic prosperity and social well-being by encouraging greater access to transit services, other goods and services, community centers, and thereby increasing economic opportunities and improving equitable access to public facilities for traditionally underserved residents. And we also think that this provides a positive impact to the environment by encouraging alternative modes of transportation, thereby reducing vehicular traffic and CO2 emissions. All right, really simple project.
Questions? I have a question. It might be more staff oriented because there's an operations component to this project for transit drivers, and we have heard that it's kind of a gray area, but we're pretty sure that we can use TSPLOST dollars for transit operations. So I'm wondering if the reason why the operating costs were listed as something separate that would have to come out of the yearly budget is because that question was still unanswered at the time. Derek, do you know why why the operations costs are broken out? Well, they could have been included.
I don't have a good answer for that. I could let you follow up with Keith on that particular question.
Okay. And I mean, it may be that, I don't know, Buck, if you and Quazon had even thought that you could ask for operations funding for this TSPLOST, to be fair. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we were not, when we made the request, we were not aware that we could ask for operational expenses.
Okay. Yeah. Just wondering about that. Questions from the committee?
That was to the point.
Mm-hmm. It's Dawn, please.
Thank you, Buck. Sorry, I was trying to follow the map. It's rather small on my screen. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how many people are we going to serve with this increased route? Is there a way to estimate that?
Sure. So we would serve the residents along Hull Road or Highway 72 between Vols Road and Pittard Road. We also think we would serve the residents located along Pittard Road as well. That's about 30 residents.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Buck, are you aware if we have ever had bus service out this way for any time, like along Pittard Road, or do you know?
Yeah, I'm not aware that we've had bus routes along this area in the past. I believe the North Athens circulatory route was only added a few years ago.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I guess the absence of bus shelters would clearly indicate that as well. And thank you for including the bus shelters in your project. Questions, discussion? All right, thank you, Buck. Oh, wait, who went up? Teresa.
Hi, this is kind of a pain in the you-know-what question, but at 30 residents, we are going to spend $22,700 per. Is that a reasonable expenditure?
Did you say 22,000 per resident?
Yeah, if you take that 681,000 and you divide it by 30 residents, I get 22,700 per resident. So I'm just, like I said, it's a pain in the you-know-what question. I just thought I'd ask it.
Yeah, that's the math.
Yeah.
I would add, Teresa, that when we talk about the citizens in North Athens, right? So many of these residents are either single car families or may potentially not have vehicles, and so I understand that it's an expensive ask per resident, and I guess I did say I counted kind of lots, not individuals, but reality is. For many of these people, this may be their only means of transportation to getting to and from their workplace or their school or other activities outside of their home.
Have you had any outreach with the people along this route?
Yeah, absolutely. So that outreach was led by Quazon, but he's not here.
Right.
As evidenced by the lack of the sermon. But
okay, thank you.
thank you.
And so Patrina, do you want to make your comment? Because I think it's an important one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Please do.
sure. I was just saying that, it's not only, these bus routes aren't only for the people that live in those areas. There are people that, are just through travelers. I know I travel through a lot of neighborhoods, and I'm always happy to see a bus stop or, so you can, I don't know how many times to multiply this. You could quadruple the number of people served, because if you think about visitors to the area, family, friends.
And you're in that Athens Tech area also. Don't leave that out. And it could stretch all the way out in that corridor there.
Mallory?
Yeah, I was just gonna, I'm sad that Quezon can't be here, but as a resident of District 9 and with friends and colleagues in the area, I can definitely speak to the work that I saw, putting these projects together and pulling the community, and there is definitely need and interest, and especially along this Period Road area. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mallory. And certainly there may be some options like we heard about, Athens Transit is rethinking the way that they are going about route planning. It just takes a lot of careful consideration because you mess with one part, you change the whole thing. But, they were looking at microtransit and whatnot. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there. And yeah, as home prices continue to increase at the center of our community, of our town, we're gonna have more and more people getting pushed to these edges, and having frequent, reliable, fare-free or transit, it's going to be just become a greater and greater need. Any additional discussion? All right, Buck, well, we'll tell Quezon you did pretty good. But I do believe that we have, looks like we have Fred in the house. Welcome back, Fred. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, so our final project presentation for the night is project number 55, Affordable Housing Infrastructure. And Buck, are you going to drive or is Fred going to drive?
I'll drive, although I want to maybe give Fred an opportunity to speak to this before I go through the presentation. Is that okay?
Sounds great. Please.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for the work that you're doing to look at all these presentations. But affordable housing, I know we hear it all the time about the housing crisis. And from where I work and visit and engage with people, it is a serious problem. I can't decide whether public education, affordable housing, which one is more of a crisis, but certainly, I think maybe, in my opinion, maybe the housing is. What I've discovered is that there isn't any affordable home ownership being built for the most part, particularly by developers, and limited amount by nonprofits, by community nonprofit groups. And one thing that kind of dramatized this for me last year when the East Athens Development Corporation received grant funding to assist persons with their rent. And we discovered that we actually assisted people who are living in public housing who are paying $800 and $900 a month, and that was a shocker to me. But again, that the fact that they're paying that much means that they have income that they probably could qualify. Well, we know that they could qualify for Habitat or other affordable type housing, but right now there's not enough of those housing that exist. And so there's a big squeeze, particularly in East Athens, of course, with gentrification and developers buying up lots. So there's really, when we say there's nowhere for certain people to go, we really mean there is nowhere for them to go except maybe out of the county somewhere. And I asked to look at some census data this morning, and I did see that as in most places, and a lot of places, particularly in the state, where the percentage of low income or African American people in community increased. In Athens, it really went down a little bit. So the population went down, and again, I'm sure that because there is nowhere for people at certain income points to live. And so this project tonight can support that. And if we can move this forward, we think that we could put together some public-private partnerships. And I've talked very often, and we had a lot of negotiation with Spencer, with Habitat, and I talked to some private developers who say that they would be willing to do some, maybe donate some services or whatever, so that we can have some affordable housing. I don't think, and people are saying this, that we can stop gentrification, but we can lessen its impact a little bit if we are able to have some funding like this to support the development of affordable home ownership, so that people will not have to live in places where they don't want to live, and can remain in Clarke County. And also, home ownership is the way to build wealth. That's way most of us, most of the people that I know, gain some equity and have some type of assets now. And so I think to me, this is a very important project, and I just hope that that you would give it proper consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. So project number 55, affordable housing infrastructure. So our goal, as Fred shared with you guys, is to create greater opportunities throughout our community to overcome barriers to home ownership by offsetting the cost of required public infrastructure like public water, public sanitary sewer, public streets, public sidewalks, public street trees, public storm drains, and stormwater management facilities. So a little bit of planning 101 here. Athens-Clarke County Code here 926.1 says that subdivisions must be designed to a high level of amenity while respecting the natural environment and allowing for a greater choice in housing types and designs. And so what this really means is that when a developer develops single family housing, there is a significant cost investment in public infrastructure. So that includes public streets, new water mains, new sanitary sewer facilities, new public sidewalks, street trees, public and private storm drains, stormwater management facilities such as detention ponds, and also requires the construction of runoff reduction measures such as bioretention areas, as well as water quality management facilities. Those costs are currently borne completely by the developer and are passed on to the home buyer.
That's right.
So again, how is this public infrastructure typically paid for? All of the costs associated with the design and construction of the required public infrastructure is the responsibility of the developer. So all of those costs that we just discussed, those are passed on to the future home builders and ultimately to the individual homeowners in the sale price of the lot or home. And listed on this slide again for you are those public infrastructure features that the developer is required to install. And so how much does the typical subdivision street cost? So the image that you see before you is the required typical street section by Athens-Clarke County. So you can see the pavement width, the on-street parking requirements, the curb and gutter, the public sidewalks, and street trees, as well as the public utilities that are installed underneath the street and in the shoulders. So we estimate that the average cost to construct a street is somewhere between $500 and $700 per linear feet of street. So the narrowest lot allowed for single family detached home in Athens-Clarke County is 40 feet. So we do the math, 40 feet of road frontage times $600 per foot. And then we take half of that because we're considering only one side of the street. The cost of that public street only is $1,200 per home.
12,000.
I'm sorry, 12,000. Thank you, Frank. And then in addition to that, the developer is required to construct stormwater management facilities for the subdivisions. So this is intended to manage runoff, right? Important component. But those stormwater management facilities cost approximately $500,000 per pond. And we think on average that 50 homes can be served by one pond. So if we do the math, that's $10,000 per home. That's the cost that is incurred by the developer, that is passed on to the builder, and ultimately the homeowner is responsible for paying for in some form or fashion when they purchase the lot.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. And how much does that does the runoff reduction facility cost? So each home is required to construct a bioretention facility to manage runoff reduction. That costs about $5,000 to $800 per home. So ultimately, the cost of public and private infrastructure per home for a single family subdivision is approximately $30,000. This does not include the land cost. This is only infrastructure. So what next? If this was supported by the TSPLOST committee and mayor and commission, then we would propose that a study be conducted and policies and procedures put in place to support this initiative in an equitable and inclusive manner, and that the cost of any required studies, management of the public funds, and oversight would be funded through this project. So we do think this closes the equity gap. You guys, I think, get that right. We do have a shortage in affordable homes. And as Fred very eloquently shared with you guys, it's a really important challenge that we need to overcome for our community. We do think this improves equitability of capital improvements throughout the community. And we think that this supports economic prosperity, social well-being, and the environment. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Buck and Fred. So we have some folks with their hands up. Jeremy?
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful idea. And I do work in the low income housing tax credit world, so I'm quite familiar with, how developers end up having to take a lot of effort and put it into infrastructure in order to build these affordable housing complexes. And I guess this might be more of a statement or a question. I can't decide which it should be, but while this is something that is worthwhile, it does add. It sounds like it's going to be adding to the infrastructure of Athens-Clarke County in the hopes of working with local nonprofits. And I guess maybe this is a statement. I hope this can stay out of the graphs. The hands of private developers. I'm assuming that there is some way to prevent this from becoming a road system, infrastructure system that can be used by the wrong people, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
Buck,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
enjoy the vacation, my friend.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy.
The goal is to create affordable housing, and it's not to, of course, create a fund for developers to create non-affordable, and I would even use the term special home ownership programs. So I would think that it would include developers if they are willing to participate, like Buck talked about. If we develop policies that set certain limitations, price points. I give you a shocker when I say it to folks, they usually fall like the chair. But and a Habitat, the mortgage on a Habitat house is $262 a month. And again, we got folks in public housing paying $800 and $900. And so to me, I don't think it matters personally, well, if we can have a public-private partnership to create home ownership in that price range, and the policies would, make it such that, certain, people who are qualified in certain income level, just like with Habitat housing, then I would think that we could kind of do something about home ownership. So I don't want to, personally, I don't want to exclude private developers from the equation, because they could also contribute to this project in other ways. And some developers have told me that they may be willing to do that may be even willing to donate some services to the creation of this. And again, I'm always kind of straight when I'm talking to developers. I understand that, they're in the business to make money, and they are not, and I always say they didn't go to social work school. They went probably to business school, or they're business people. And so I understand that. I don't expect for them to stop doing what they're doing, but some of them are willing to contribute to a project like this, I believe, so that again we can stop the gentrification of I talk about East Athens, but in other areas as well. Because without something like this, with the way things are going, there is no affordable housing, and we just talking, and no one is going to take. I do believe it's going to take some type of creative approach that something like this would support to compete with the open market over there now, well, in terms of the developers who are again in the business to make money, and based on what I'm told, and what I'm told is pretty convincing. If the infrastructure for streets and et cetera, $30,000, and you're gonna pass that on to a buyer, then it's not gonna probably be the buyers who we are trying to reach. And so that's the situation that we have now. We have houses that are priced, at a higher range. And we have a lot, of course, in Athens, a lot of housing being developed for students and rented by the bedrooms and et cetera, and one bedroom. Our families can't even afford
Competition.
one bedroom in some of these houses, in some of these. And again, I'm not criticizing that. That's the way the world turns. But at the same time, I think that we can come together and create some. We're talking about a small project, and so that we can have some affordable housing. Because again, $262 for a Habitat house. That's a lot of housing. And I also read a study that Kennesaw University did for Georgia Habitat in 2017. And that study talked about the impact of home ownership. Of course, it talked about the fact that the families have more leftover income, that now they can start a college savings account. It talked about it even mentioned something that we might not think about, but it impacted the kids who were in the household who had asthma. It improved in home ownership situation. Because again, a lot of the stresses disappear when you're paying all your income right now, maybe wherever for housing. But then if you can have a situation where you have some income left over, in addition to that, you are developing some equity. And so I think it's a win-win. And so again, then those households also they become property taxpayers, so they pay back into the local budget. So so again, I think it's creative. I think it's doable, and I hope that that it would give it would give it real consideration.
Thank you, Fred. And we do have a couple more minutes for questions from the committee. Let's start with Patrina and see how far we get.
Okay, I'm just making sure I understand the structure of this, because I was also on the vision committee, and that was, for home grants. It's my understanding that the asking organization has to show that it has some funding of its own. So would this be the funding?
Yeah,
The
I think this is
auxiliary funding that home would be asking for, or could be.
I think I'm not sure that I understand your question. I think this is a little different. This is kind of like a new model in terms of home ownership, and again, trying to react to the reality of today, so to speak, in terms of right now there isn't anything to compete with the open market in terms of why would a developer lose money, and they're not going to on purpose developing housing and they can't sell it at a price unless they sell it at a loss. And with the infrastructure costs and related costs that it requires to even to build a house. So this here could cut the cost. This is all about cutting costs so that the price point for these houses will be reachable by low and moderate income families.
Yeah, but you're talking about federal home funding, HUD, or home funding
No, not necessarily.
Partially fund this? Oh, I see. Okay, I got it.
I want to move John's question in the chat to the front. And Jeremy, I see you had a response. John, can you ask that question aloud, and let's talk about it in our last couple minutes?
Sure, of course. I just, I love this idea. I'm a huge fan of Habitat for Humanity. I actually started one in Tennessee years ago. That's a lot of bang for the buck and makes huge differences in people's lives. My only fear is that, or concern, is that if we help fund these infrastructure, investments to help create new neighborhoods, my cynical worry is that somehow developers derail those to create more luxury student housing or more other fancy housing instead of affordable housing.
Yeah,
What are
exactly.
what are the protections that would make sure that we don't inadvertently fuel more gentrification in
Right.
housing?
Of course, we have discussed that, and so there can be policies, and as I understand it now, there are some policies that prevent families from buying and getting a Habitat house and selling it immediately. There's a time frame where it may be 10 years, and where I think there's a buyback.
No, I understand. I know Habitat, and I know that there are protections within
So that's
Habitat
what,
houses, but
right, we would
this
want
doesn't
to,
necessarily require that Habitat is part of these developments, does it?
It
right,
doesn't, and,
yes, but we
and
are talking about kind of broadly basing this on the Habitat model, so.
Yeah. Which is a great model, yeah.
Right, and so exactly,
But
so
how do we provide some guardrails to make
yeah,
policies,
and Fred, if I can respond to John's question, part of our proposal is that we develop those policies. So we're proposing as part of these funds that studies be conducted and appropriate policies be put in place. So Fred and I can't really answer all of those questions tonight because we do think it needs deeper thinking and more minds in the room.
Okay, but I appreciate the creative minds you guys are bringing to this because it's a crucial question.
thank you.
All right, we have just 2 more minutes. I want to be fair to all the presenters who went before, and we tried to keep them at 25 minutes. Katie, I'm going to move you to the top of the stack because we haven't heard from you as much tonight.
It'll take a little more time, maybe.
Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out there's currently a committee that's talking about inclusionary housing. And I think one of their big topics is looking at a mechanism for preserving affordable housing that does get some kind of subsidy to make sure that it continues to be affordable housing. So Georgia doesn't currently have that, but or Athens-Clarke doesn't have it, but many states do. For example, or other programs do. There are deed restrictions, so a house could not be sold. And that's a huge debate actually, because you want you want housing to be a method of wealth creation, but on the other hand, if the house has received a public subsidy, you want it to continue to be affordable. So just adding more information there, but there is movement right now in the government or in committees about looking at creating permanent affordable housing policies.
Thank you, Katie. We'll have Teresa, and then we will have Daryl, and we'll close the discussion for this project. Teresa?
Hi, thank you very much. Okay, so I got out my calculator again because I love to do that, and it looks like this would fund about 650 homes. Is that about right?
That is about right as of the time that we prepared this presentation. The reality is that the cost of construction continues to rise, and so it's likely that by the time that SPLOST was actually passed and we were able to receive these funds, that could be almost only like 300 homes. I mean, that's
Right.
the reality of the world that we live in.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Okay, so in the grand scheme, if you could build enough affordable housing, how many of these homes would there be? Or how many dwelling units? Let me put it that way, rather than individual homes.
Fred, do you want to answer that, or you want me to take it?
Well, I probably you, but let me comment first. I could say, that's a very, very difficult question. And again, we, we wish that we could even think about building enough affordable housing. And so this, to me, I think this is really like a drop in the bucket, but go on Bo, please.
Yeah, I mean, so to put this into context, uh, we have a lot of industries that are going to be coming online within our community, right? We have the University of Georgia. We have no, we have a significant need for affordable and middle income housing,
Right.
and 600 is on the low end.
I'm just trying to get a sense of what the scale of the need is. I mean, I think if we could, help 600 folks get homes, that'd be wonderful. That'd be great. But I mean, what do you anticipate as the overall need going forward, 10, 20 years?
I don't think I'm not prepared to answer that question.
I can't answer that as well. I just, just have a sense of what that there is a problem, and it's easy to see that there is, in terms of, it's like I said, we get calls all the time. There's nowhere to refer people to, and we do know that again, there's very little affordable housing being built, and but again, I think we will have to have a study to determine where how many are actually needed.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I don't even
I
think
agree. I agree with you both that, we need more affordable housing, and I think there needs to be sort of a county-wide, statewide approach to it. I mean, maybe we wouldn't get lucky at the state level, but, at least county-wide, there should be an approach to funding this infrastructure. And I guess as much as I love this project, I'm afraid, to me, it doesn't seem like a TSPLOST project. So I'm sorry to say that, but.
Yeah, I understand. And the first question I asked when I went into one of the committee meetings was whether infrastructure for affordable housing would fall under TSPLOST. And I was told that it does. And when you think about it, it is infrastructure. We're talking about streets, sidewalks, and that type of thing. So that is TSPLOST, I think, yeah.
All right, so we are over time. Daryl, will you take us home with your last
Yes, I will. I was listening to everybody's comment about affordable housing. Me, on a personal level, I have lived in affordable housing. I lived in low income housing. I lived in the projects. I lived in subsidized houses. And the only thing they always said that they all had one thing in common is this: they all are lateral. What I mean by lateral, that means that they never make a step up. Every time, as long as we continue to build affordable housing, the people are not gaining. They stay on a simple plane, a simple level. So I'm always been in the type of person that thinks that you should promote people to buy homes. I'm more into people buying a home than to go live into a subsidized housing that a generation next and a generation next and a generation next come right up out of that same system. It's about breaking the system somewhere. And the only way we're going to be able to break the system of that, we have to have affordable and subsidized housing is start to promote buying homes. I mean, if you go on subsidize, affordable house for $89,000, what's wrong with selling that home to that person? You understand where I'm getting at?
I agree with you, Daryl. And again, there are folks who are in subsidized housing that would love to get that first house, that first, and then move up the ladder, like some of us have been fortunate to do. So,
But
so I agree.
But
that
we always had affordable housing. We always had subsidized housing. We always had Section 8. And to me, I'm being a man being of truth. They don't gain nothing. I'm talking as a person who lived in those type of houses. You really don't gain them because he doesn't have the mind. They don't give you the mindset to buy. And
Yeah.
until we get to the point that we're going to start getting people that's in subsidized housing and affordable housing a chance to buy. We're not looking to buy anymore. That's like helping.
Daryl, if I can respond really quickly, our goal, the goal of this project, is to promote home ownership. This is not subsidized housing. This is home
Find out
ownership.
because people put affordable housing as if it's just affordable, and they don't have the chance to buy. That's what we hoping that if that project were to come, it'd be a great project. But if it's the project for them to have a chance to own their own home, that'd be even better project.
That's what
But
we're talking about.
I don't know if it's under TSPLOST, but that is the most important thing that needs to be done in Athens that I know of. Besides all these streets need to be fixed, is that people have the chance and the opportunity to own homes.
Correct. I agree.
That's my representative.
I'm just I'm just telling you my feelings because of me being in that type of environment. You understand? I lived in an environment. I was raised in those environments. I didn't get out of them environments until I was 18. And I moved to Georgia on my own. Now I own 2 homes. But the only way you're gonna do that is you have to learn something outside of the environment. But if you have something that they don't have anything to gain, it's a no win. And I regress. I had to say it. I had to say that at another meeting. So this is not the first one.
Yeah. We are absolutely over time, and someone might be upset with me about it, but I mean, housing is Daryl, again, I'm with you. It's our
Lauren, I'm not upset. I'm the next presenter. You're fine. Miles is going to be short as me and Buck. Go ahead.
Oh,
Did I miss something?
no, I'll talk to Quazon here in a minute. We went through yours already.
Yeah.
Sorry, Quazon. Buck did very good. There were no parables. You're upset a little bit.
That's funny.
So
we could close with a parable, though.
I think there's probably a parable behind our affordable housing issues here in Athens. And really, this is a nationwide issue, and there's some great conversations happening in the chat. It's not anything that local government can fix, but we got to do something, and it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Maybe we need the state to authorize a housing special local option sales tax. I don't know, but we have this great project presented by Fred, and we thank him for his creative work here, really thinking about how to incentivize developers to build affordable housing. So we are at time. So I will say goodnight to our presenters and thank you again.
Thank you, Fred and Buck.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
very
committee
much.
members, thank you for the great discussion tonight and everything that's going on in chat. I think it's really important stuff, and the public will be glad to hear what you had thought and had to say. So this concludes our week of 3 presentations. We've got just 2 next week on Monday and Wednesday. And then we will start to review alternate projects the following week. So in the home stretch of our project presentations now. Derek, do you have any announcements for us?
Not this evening, no ma'am.
All right, and if you guys, maybe I'll share this in the chat really quickly. The alternates form is going out to our presenters. This is what it looks like. so you can get a feel for that. And again, we are saying presenters have the option to submit an alternate, a phased version of a project. They certainly do not have to, not required. And that's all I've got. All right, committee. Thank you for an awesome week. I'm taking the next 2 days off from work and my side gig.
You earned it, Lauren. You earned it.
Yes, I hope you guys will have a good, relaxing weekend or week.
You work hard.
We will. Thank you. Have a blessed
Y'all
night,
take care.
everybody.
See you on Monday.
Bye.
Bye. And Derek, do you need anything from me?
No, man, we're good to go. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.